Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to a presentation called Designing Email Challenges for Remote Teaching and Learning, brought to you by the ACRL University Library Section's Professional Development Committee. We're so delighted to have you and our presenters here today. I am Sam Harlow, pronouns she, hers, and I'm the co-chair of this committee. I will be moderating this program along with my fellow committee members, Max and Anna. This is one of an ongoing series of online programs sponsored by our committee. Here is a link to where all of our programs reside in the past and where this recording will also be, but you will also get a follow-up link with this recording. So before we begin today's presentation, I want to touch base on a few logistics. This session is being recorded and we will send the link of the video, slides, and any other supplemental documentation to everyone who registered for the program. The program will run for an hour total, including time for questions. Please feel free to add questions to the Q&A feature that you see in the Zoom webinar interface, and the host and Max will be monitoring them as they come in. Please reserve the regular chat box for comments and participation from the audience. As you use the chat feature, please make sure that you send your message to everyone. Click on the little arrow next to where it says host and panelists and change it to everyone so everyone can see what you are putting in the chat. In order to increase accessibility for all, we are also using Zoom's auto caption feature during this presentation. At the bottom of the screen, you should see an option to adjust live captions, including hiding them if that's your preference. We will post a link to the brief evaluation in the chat box after the Q&A session at the end. Please take a few moments to give us your feedback on today's program. So with those announcements out of the way, I am very happy to start today's program. I'll briefly introduce our presenters and then they can more fully introduce themselves as they see fit. Jen Bonet is a social sciences and humanities librarian at the University of Maine. She has co-designed a variety of email-based challenges on topics like misinformation, news literacy, racial justice, finding funding, and how to get published. Whenever possible, she is out camping, canoeing, and experimenting with baked goods. Cinta Sellers is a business librarian at Miami University in Ohio. She has had the opportunity to design a number of tutorials and electronic resources, but this was her first email challenge. She enjoys hiking, traveling, and painting. So without further ado, Jen and Cinta, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Bonet. My pronouns are she, her. We're excited to be here with you today. I'm joining you from the University of Maine, located on Penobscot Nation homelands, along with my fabulous colleague, Cinta Sellers.
Yeah, I'm Cinta Sellers. I'm the current business librarian here at Miami University in Ohio, and I had the opportunity to work with Jen for the COVID-19 Misinformation Email Challenge.
And hey, sorry, Jen and Cinta, we cannot see your slides right now.
So Cinta's sharing and I see her slide. What do you see, Sam?
We see Cinta Sellers has started screen sharing. Double click to enter full screen mode. So other people, you see them? Okay, great. Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so the focus of our talk today is to share some of the ways that we've used email challenges to engage our campus as well as communities outside the university in topical asynchronous learning. There'll be lots of time to discuss ideas. We'll look at some examples together and consider ways that these challenges might work for you.
Okay, I'm sorry again. Some people can see them and some can't. Can you try stop sharing and share again? And we'll just try that. Sorry again. It's about half and half. I see in the chat.
Sure, hold on a sec. Sorry, you guys. My Zoom. Where did Zoom go?
We turn the recording on. Thank you.
You're welcome. So to kick off, we've got a poll that should be coming up for you guys. We'd like to hear from you about, have you ever participated in an email challenge yourself? And have you ever created an email challenge? We're going to give you a few minutes to give your responses here. Just while you're answering those questions, we hope you'll jump in and share your experiences or ideas throughout our time together. Our goal for this webinar is for it to be as useful and informative for your work as possible. So let's see. There should be a poll, hopefully. I know that there's some chat here.
Yes, some people are saying they only see one question. We do one question and then we move on to the next one. So we will get there soon.
Jasmine's facilitating for us too.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a good number of responses at this point?
Okay, we're at 97%. So I'm gonna end it
Cool.
and share results. Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Wow. Okay, looks like most people haven't, some aren't sure, but about, I don't know, a fifth of us, 6 of us have participated in an email challenge before. Can we go with the next one? Oh, sorry, Cinta. The next poll question, yeah.
No problem.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm working on getting the second one up.
No problem.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Great. Is this the same question?
Nope, this one is very
Okay,
similar, but
good.
this is, have you ever created an email
Okay.
challenge?
I got worried because it's much
No worries.
faster. My bad. Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. No, Jasmine, no worries that you don't know what an email challenge is. This is the session for you. So if you don't know, that's great.
Okay, we're at 96%. So I am going to end the poll and share the results.
Oh, great. So we have 2 who said yes. Did you see that, Cinta?
I actually can't see the poll.
You can't see,
but that
okay.
is okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like 2 who said yes, they've created a challenge, and most people haven't. And then a few people weren't sure. So that's fabulous. Okay. So it sounds like, so for those of you who have participated or created, please feel free to share your experiences throughout. And we'll just keep going with some of the experiences we've had, and we'll have lots of time for discussion. So we'll go on to the next slide. All right. So you may be wondering why email challenges. We saw some of that in chat. Why now? And from a range of feedback we received, we have learned that engagement that allows participants to go at their own pace and on their own time is in high demand, especially given our various modes of dispersal and remote study or work situations that we've experienced during the COVID era. But even before the novel coronavirus, we were seeing a need to reach people beyond those available for synchronous meetings, often because our students, staff, and faculty work or do research offsite and have additional obligations and life experiences that may not fit with our typical approaches to programming. So on this timeline, going from left to right is a selection of programs that we've implemented at different points in time to engage with issues and topics that are resonant for our various communities. So for example, from 2014 to 2017, several colleagues and I designed programs like grants and research workshops that took place in the library, as well as a Wikipedia edit-a-thon, which also took place on site. And during this same time frame, we designed news literacy workshops in response to socio-political events like the 2016 election or racial profiling incidents. And attendance at these events may reflect some of your own experiences, and that it was fair, and we often planned for more participation, but for those in attendance, even if it was just a handful of people, the programs were a hit. And what we kept hearing was these types of sessions were valuable and should be more widely available. So we wondered, how could we reach a wider audience, a more diverse audience, with a small pool of librarians already involved in many programmatic efforts? What about those campus colleagues and community members who couldn't join us in person or at the same time? And this was before Zoom was a household name. And so we wanted to create something that was both educational and engaging. Thus came the emergence of email challenges, which are asynchronous online programs where participants basically need an email address and an internet connection to participate. And this effort did not start with us. It started with research impact challenges, some of which you may be familiar with, at places like Brown and the University of Michigan. But we found the structure so useful that we've adapted it to all sorts of topics and needs. So some of the challenges we've designed are on the timeline on the screen, like the Power Researcher Challenge that aims to ramp up research skills and habits, the COVID-19 Misinformation Challenge, which Cinta will discuss shortly, and the Racial Justice Challenge, which we launched in the summer of 2020. We turned our news literacy workshops and grants trainings into challenges, and just recently created separate literature review challenges for grad students and undergrads, as well as a Publish and Thrive challenge to help early career scholars become familiar with and confident in the dynamic landscape of academic work and academic publishing. So these were personal and professional development opportunities that arose from topics we wanted to learn more about, or that our campus was telling us they wanted to learn more about. So at this point, we're going to take a look at a few of these challenges with you, all of which were aimed at different communities we serve. So we have 3 challenges to show you. And then we'll have an open discussion with you about topics you think would work well in this format and how you might see this working and in what capacity for your libraries or institutions. So we'll go to the next slide. So last spring, we launched a literature review challenge for undergraduates. I mentioned this briefly in response to what many of my colleagues and I were hearing from instructors and students about the struggles that they were facing, both when teaching and when learning about how to find information and synthesize ideas. So in this challenge, each day for 5 days, can we go back one slide? Each day for 5 days, participants engaged with brief tasks designed to help them make the most of their literature review process, which included refining a research question, strategically searching for literature, accessing paywalled sources, organizing and synthesizing ideas between sources, and using citation management tools. And so each day for those 5 days, they'd get an email from me that would launch that day's challenge. We had over 100 participants, primarily undergraduate students, but also some grad students and a few faculty members. So if it hasn't been shared yet, Cinta or Max are going to share the link to this challenge in chat. And what we like to do is give you just a few minutes, because we want to make sure we get to all 3, just a few minutes to take a brief pass through the challenge. So feel free to spend your 3 minutes looking at the whole thing, or maybe choose one day to review. And then we'll come back together and discuss kind of what you think works and what else you'd like to see or do with a topic like this. What are some areas for growth? So we're going to give you just a few minutes to go to that link, and then we'll come back and chat about it in a minute. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. And if you have comments or feedback, feel free to put that in chat.
While people are reviewing it, Max put this in the Google Doc, but someone did ask, what is the FTE of your campuses?
Oh, great. So at UMaine, we have about 10,000 undergraduates and about 2,000 graduate students, maybe a little more of each. I hope that helps with the student size. What about you, Cinta?
We're at about 18,000 total, primarily undergraduates. I would say we maybe have 1,000 graduate students here on campus.
Oops. Thanks, Sam. I only got the tail end there. So we'll give you another minute or two. So Emily asks, was there something participants received at the end? That's a great question. And the answer is no. We didn't give them incentives, although quite a few students received credit, either extra credit or it was embedded into their course. We reached out to faculty ahead of the challenge in order to integrate this in ways that worked well for those classes. And we ended up actually having faculty following semesters. So even this spring, using the challenge in their courses in different ways. So no, a digital badge is a great idea, and they could absolutely incorporate that in different ways into a badging system. But that's just not something we necessarily did. So people either participated for the content or because they were getting credit. And there's some questions in the Q&A too. Did you have a dedicated email for these challenges that was separate from your usual email? So many times we've used MailChimp, but the free version, which only allows you to send a certain number of emails per day, that works great for something like this, where we had about 100 people participating, because I think you can send up to 1,000 emails a day through MailChimp. The only drawback is sometimes it goes to spam. And so I've actually gone back and forth between whether or not to use MailChimp. There's so many features that make it really helpful and robust. But when I send it through my work Gmail, it almost never goes to spam. So that's a really good question. We ended up having over 3,000 people participate in our racial justice challenge. And so MailChimp was, well, neither free MailChimp nor Gmail was great for that, because Gmail lets you send 500 at a time and MailChimp lets you send 1,000. So we had to break it up into multiple emails. And then Christine asked, is the content on the live guide pages essentially the body of the email you send out? And I would say yes, although truncated. So we send a little bit of a teaser in the email about what they will be doing for the day. We link them to the day, and we kind of set up the first email, especially the first day, kind of what the week is going to look like. And then someone else asked, how is this different from creating a live guide module? And I'll be honest, we have the I think lower tier access to live guides. So I've never created, I think this person's talking about probably something specific to SpringShare, and we don't have that that feature. So we just create everything kind of how you see it from, kind of from scratch, but with that modular nature of live guides. But I'd love, if you have ideas about how to create a live guide module with this, please do share.
I'm going to answer the next one.
Yeah, go for it, Cinta.
Yes, it's, will these lip guides be available to consult after the presentation? And they should be, yes. I believe they're all links in the presentation themselves as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, they will be. Oh, that's a great question, Minnie. How did students getting credit for completing it prove that they did the challenge? Typically, in the courses they were in, they would have to, for instance, in the Lit Review Challenge, you'll see that first day has a template. They would have to submit the template to their completed template to their faculty member. Or for those days where there wasn't a template, they would submit a reflection or kind of the work that they did. They would take notes and send that in. Good point that some IT departments might not like that volume of email as well. Were you able to assess the student learning for the challenge? We always send an evaluation out, but we don't do a formal assessment. Cinta, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I would say the feedback sometimes provided some idea about what people learned, but yeah, no formal assessment.
And as far as completing the challenge, we send an evaluation form, and one of the questions asks for each day, if they've done it or if they will do it in the future, and if they learned something, and then they have an opportunity to share what they learned. They do not send deliverables to us. This is really, we put it out there, and then they can work with their classes and their faculty, and we're happy to work with them too for the accountability responsibility piece. But really, we rely on feedback. We want to make it anonymous and, as make it possible for as many people to participate. And so that's kind of the structure we've set up, but there are probably other structures that would work well as too. We're gonna, just for the sake of time, definitely try to get back to some of these questions, but for now we're gonna, does that sound good, Cinta, to keep going with the next one?
Perfect, yeah.
But, okay, but we'll definitely keep answering some of these questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. My screen share today has just been all over the place. Let me go back to slide view. Oh. Well, I don't entirely know what my computer is doing, but we're gonna, can you guys see my screen okay? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to move on to our COVID-19 misinformation challenge. So this is a challenge I actually got to participate and work with Jen to create. And so given our current ever-evolving new normal and the prevalence of misinformation around the coronavirus pandemic, Jen and I designed the COVID-19 misinformation challenge. And this actually appealed to a very different audience than the literature review challenge. Anyone could join with an internet connection and an email address. We didn't require any logins for this. And we had a really wide reach of participants. This thing kind of exploded in popularity. We had participants from across New England, across the United States, and some international representation. So hopefully Mark or somebody else can pop the link to this into the chat so you guys can kind of take a look while I tell you about the aim for this particular program. So it was, again, a fun and 5-day email challenge event. So for each day for 5 days, registrants received an email from Jen, a task designed to test their knowledge of the novel coronavirus. In this situation, most of the content is in the answer feedback that participants receive once they actually take the quizzes. They spent time, so each day they would spend time with different things. So for one day it was evaluating memes, the other doctors, then a previous day news headlines, finally treatment, and then finally some science behind the virus. So we just hope you guys can take a few minutes to look at this particular email challenge and tell us what you think some of the pros of this approach for this topic would be, and what are some potential areas for growth. And we can share some feedback too that we got. We got a lot of really good positive feedback from this. A couple of people said, I just want to let you know that they look forward to these little quizzes each day. They thanked us for doing this. And another person remarked, this is a great exercise in thinking. I would love to provide it to my middle school students and their parents on the weekly news. Okay, so hopefully everybody can look at that link. And I've got the Q&A open. Chat. I'm not seeing any new questions yet, but I'm hoping people are able to take a look at the link. But that could be my particular issues around today.
Sent to their comments like, thanks for the Creative Commons license. And someone else, and someone said the SIFT from News Literacy Project provides excellent weekly roundups for these types of challenges. Thank you for that pro tip. Trisha says, love the SIFT. Yes. David, I hope I put the link in again. Not sure. Oh, let me see. I gotta give it, I'm not sure what the issue is, but yeah, maybe try another browser, please, because we'd love for you to be able to access it. Oh, and then Grace asks, how did we promote it, Senta? How do we promote the?
Well, honestly, it was we talk about that in a later slide, but we reached out through listservs. We promoted through our liaison department. I believe we worked with the UMaine communications department too, and they did a lot of social media posts. And then we ended up putting on ALA and ACRL listservs as well. So it was really promoted in a wide variety of ways. But honestly, for this, it felt like word of mouth just really took off and it became really popular. And what was really interesting from my perspective was how many people from like internationally took this and seemed to enjoy it.
Those are great points. And Grace also asks, do you work with faculty to integrate it into the class, or did you send the email to all campus community? And I'd say both. We have a liaison model here, and so we would work with our faculty in that way. And then if they wanted to incorporate it, especially after the challenge ended, we've left, as you all have seen, we've left these links live and accessible. And even these are, live guides are dynamic. So we've even updated them from time to time. However, you'll see that the quizzes and things from this particular challenges have remained the same. And so lots has changed since those 2 years. Since 2 years ago, if you can believe it's been 2 years. And so this sort of thing is really more of an example. And then people can use some of the resources on each page that continue to be useful, even if the questions themselves may be a little outdated. And how do we get the contact email list? A lot of us are connected with our departments, but also there is a great list that's publicly available from our provost office. That's all of the deans, chairs, department heads, and administrative specialists. And so in one fell swoop, we can email, several hundred people, BCC'd, of course, with this kind of information. And they appreciate it because then they can share it with their faculty, staff, and students. So that's one major way that we promote these challenges.
There's some good Q&A questions here. I'll answer Suzanne Duncan. If we ran this again, would we update it? And I think probably so. There would be other things to add to this. And then Mandy asked, how did you find the misinformation examples that you used for this one? Well, this we created not like fairly early on in the pandemic. And so we were kind of paying attention with what was kind of being talked about either in the news or what we were hearing about at librarians. And Jen, if you want to talk more about that, feel free.
Well, I think you covered that part, and I was just gonna bring up some questions that are coming in the Q&A. Someone said, "How did you find the misinformation examples that you used for this one?" And I'd say one of the things we did is we found things that people were sharing on social media. we experienced ourselves. Some things were being debunked. Other issues were coming up in the news, and this, like Senta and I were paying attention to all of this, and it was really the reason that we put the challenge together in the first place. That said, as you might imagine, there could have been, 20 different COVID-19 challenges on different aspects of the challenge. And even, Suzanne brings up, since science and medicine are being used in different ways at different levels of exposure, if you ran this again, would you update this? And if so, how? Yes, I would update it in so many ways. And one example might be to look specifically at health disparities and questions of COVID-19 and health disparities and misinformation. That's something I've thought about a lot since this challenge came out. At the time, we were just like responding to these immediate issues that were coming up. And then, we've just learned more and more about health disparities. So that's one way we might change it. And then there might be more nuance to some of the responses. We were trying to do something, as you might see in the Google Forms, that would be manageable and digestible, but it also means that there's some nuance. There's some nuance, but there could be more nuance. So those are some things that come to my mind. Do you have anything else, Senta, that you wanted to mention?
No, I think you covered it for me too. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll answer one more question in the Q&A and then we'll go to the last one and then we'll try to keep responding to questions. These are awesome. So Stephanie asks, how did you negotiate with instructors to include this in courses to create course credit for this? Did you ever receive pushback? And how did you incorporate this into library instruction? Those are great questions. So with the literature review challenge, we reached out to liaison departments and asked if they would like to use it. But as I mentioned also, we had been hearing so much from folks about a real need for that material. So it wasn't hard. We did not receive pushback. We received just a lot of interest. We've had everyone from English faculty to nursing faculty using the literature review challenge. With the COVID-19 misinformation challenge, similarly, we had some instructors who wanted to use it, but we actually heard from more librarians and library staff, people who had come across it outside our university who were like, could we also do this? And I think it was Penn State who did their own COVID-19 misinformation challenge based on this. And so the person who mentioned the Creative Commons license, that's our hope, is that some of this might be, fodder for inspiration, because we've gotten so much inspiration from all these other existing resources that we link to on these guides. All right, so we will absolutely come back to what as much as we can, but we want to point you to the final challenge for today. So we'll go to next slide, please.
Okay, let me see if it will. There
All right,
we go.
thanks, Cinta. So our final example is the Finding Funding Challenge, which was designed in collaboration with the Grant Development Office on campus. It's for a very different audience than the other two that we've looked at. And it was to help participants either take their first steps into grant seeking or to take their grant seeking skills to the next level in order to, and this was our pitch, effectively and efficiently find funding opportunities tailored to participants' creative and scholarly interests and to make their grant proposal a standout. So this will be a common refrain for you each day for 5 days. Registrants received an email from me with a link to that day's live guide page, which is where you've probably discerned we've hosted all of our challenges. And they got instructions from us on how to complete 1 or 2 tasks related to grants work. This was aimed at faculty and graduate students, but we also had undergraduate students participate, some community members like small business owners and nonprofit staff. We built the first 2 days around some of our licensed resources and like our robust funding databases, but we also included lots of freely available content that we adapted, curated, and sequenced. So if it hasn't been shared already, we're going to share this link in chat and give you a few minutes to kind of take a pass through the Finding Funding Challenge and see what you think. And then we'll come back and chat about what you think works and what could be some areas for growth. Great.
Like Jen is answering Dan's question, and let's see.
Thank you, Cinta, for, go ahead, yeah.
No problem. Michelle asked an interesting question about Creative Commons license. Is this by design or was it missed? I'm honestly not sure. I know for the COVID-19 misinformation challenge, we did put it up with Creative Commons licensing? And
I can answer that question.
yeah.
That yes, Michelle, that was missed. And actually, in large part, it's because some of them were created for our campus and they were created before some of our more public challenges, like the one like Senta was mentioning, like the COVID-19 misinformation challenge. Once we started doing these public ones that were open to the greater community at large, we started putting Creative Commons licenses on them. But the ones that were intended locally, at first we just didn't think about that. So yes, it's just that it was missed. And so thank you for mentioning it, because I'll go back through and add those licenses to those as well. Someone mentioned it looks like a person has to have a Google account to complete the quizzes, and someone else mentioned an issue with that. Google has recently changed some things with their public forums and quizzes, and it's possible that I will need to go back in and make sure that it's public access, but it should not be that way. We set it up so that anyone could participate without an account, that they could literally just go in, answer the questions, and receive the feedback. So thank you for bringing that up, and I'll be sure to go back in and check on those and update them as we need. Let's see. Any advice on timing these challenges relative to the academic calendar for maximum participation? That's such a great question. It's depended on things. So like the COVID-19 misinformation challenge was not built around the academic calendar. It was in response, right, to a situation. And so was the racial justice challenge. It was in response. And but the literature review challenges and the power researcher challenge, some of these other ones, we did try to time to when people might be working on midterms or finals, so that they might feel a sense of association with a need for some of these skills. But with the materials aimed at faculty and graduate students, especially the grants work, all of that, isn't necessarily on a set cycle. It really depends on the grant and the work that the people are doing. And so what we would do, and you all may have better ideas than this, is we would launch them like a couple different times a year, so that people who wanted to participate, I mean, even though they were live and accessible, people like to participate during a week, like to dedicate time. So we would just launch them again and say, come participate with us. And they would do that. So we've actually rerun some of the challenges several times. So Nancy, oh wait. Yes, we partnered with our grants office on this last activity, and Jody asks, how did you allow community members to log into FDO for this challenge? And I would add Pivot as well, which is the first day. That's a great question. And what we would do is I would reach out to anyone who was a community member. There were usually very few, but anyone not affiliated. And I would let them know, one, they could come into the library and use our public computers. But if that was not possible for them, that we could set up a Zoom meeting and do some searching together and look at the resources in tandem. So that's what we did. And that's worked out great, especially for during this period where folks couldn't come in. But previous to COVID, people would come in and I would work with them then. So yeah, I just offer my time and usually people take me up on it and we work over Zoom.
Great.
Yes, did we find? Yeah, go ahead, Senta.
No, I just wanted to point out that Grace, who used to work at Maine, actually, she asked a great question in chat that people are responding to about making sure people stayed engaged in the challenges for the whole 5 days. I guess my insight was that if the topic is particularly timely, that helps. But for the COVID-19 challenge, Jen found some really hilarious images, and I think people found it so fun to take that they tended to come back over and over again. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, Senta, please. I'm so glad you said that. That's a great point. And I would also say, Grace, to your question, you are intuitive because what we can see from just general stats and live guides is that participation does drop off every day as far as like clicking through to the live guide. So it's just typical. It's a 5-day challenge and it's gonna, people are most interested day 1 and day 2, and then there's drop off. But to answer another question that Nancy said, do you find people coming back after the 5-day challenges? Yes. So what we hear oftentimes is, I'm so glad this is going to remain up and accessible because I wasn't able to get through all the challenges. I'm going to come back and work on these. I've scheduled time to do this. I'm going to, with the COVID-19 Misinformation Challenge, kind of what Cinta's hinting at too, is we had people emailing us, I'm working with my spouse or my kids, or I'm sharing with my students, and we're all kind of working on this together. And so doing it in groups, so encouraging people to do it in groups could help with that. But there is going to be some drop off. And then the nice thing is if you leave it up, people will continue to be able to do that work and to do it on their own time. The 5 days is arbitrary. So you could spread it out over 5 weeks and just have one a week. That might help. That might keep people engaged because they don't feel like they're having to smash it into one week. So I hope that helps. Okay, we'll answer 1 or 2 more questions and then keep going. But thank you, Stephanie. I love the idea of finding funding. How did you all come up with the idea for this challenge? We had done several grants workshops prior to remote learning during COVID, and I had done all these various challenges with different folks like Cinta. And so to me, it was a natural transition. Okay, we aren't going to be able to meet with folks. We could do a Zoom meeting, or we could create something even more robust than a 2-hour meeting. And that's how we decided to translate all of the work and be able to even do more than that 2 hours into the Finding Funding Challenge. And so that's really what generated this. And as we had chatted about earlier, these are dynamic. So the challenges can be updated and changed, and they can address new things depending on the time and energy that everyone has. Okay, I think this question might have gotten missed. Yes, what is the workflow and timeline? You send an initial email, folks sign up. Yeah, okay. So we send an initial email or several publicity emails, in advance of the challenges. So maybe depending on how soon we have them complete. So Cinta and I were working fast, but weeks or months in advance, depending on how soon, but probably weeks in advance. Folks sign up and then we send another blast. And then each day, that 5 days of that week, they get an email with a little intro to that day, a link to that day, and then a way to contact us to follow up if they would like. And you will get follow-up. People love to share how they're experiencing your challenge. And then initial between a promotion and sign up, people start signing up immediately. And we usually will contact various entities, so faculty, student groups, if that's relevant. Sometimes it gets into our campus newspaper. If you can get it in your campus newspaper to get more students aware of it, that can work out great. And then we launch, and then afterward, another idea to get more eyes on your work that you've put all this work into is to then, like if you have, a faculty development newsletter or an alumni newsletter, or things that go out, sharing those things with them to let them know what you're up to, and so that they can also participate or learn along with you. So I hope that helps. Okay. I think we're going to have to keep going. So, but you're going to have our email addresses so that we can reach out to you after the fact. But let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Cinta. Okay, so in case you're interested, some of you have brought this up, in poking around in some of the other challenges, a few additional ones are here on the screen. And I believe Max is going to put a link to all of them in chat for you. Great. And then based on all these great questions, we have an LGBTQ+ Learning and Affirming Challenge launching next Monday, April 4th, a week from today. And if you're interested in it for the content, if you'd also like to see a challenge in action, please sign up and join us. We'd love it. And so Max has shared with you the RSVP link so that you can join us. But what you'll also see are links to some of our other challenges in case you'd like to take a look, in case they're helpful, and feel free again to reach out to us with feedback or thoughts about how you might adapt some of this work, and if you want to brainstorm together. Okay, next slide. So in addition to some of the qualitative assessments we've shared, participation soared when we moved from in-person to online. So in this table that you see, we have participation in in-person versus an email challenge of a relatively equivalent programming. So participation in grants programming, for example, nearly quintupled in size when we moved to a challenge format. Our literature review workshop numbers nearly doubled when it became a challenge. Our news literacy challenge went above and beyond our wildest expectations. That was one that was broadcast far and wide to communication networks, to ALA and ACRL. And the racial justice challenge built on an ethic of commitment to addressing systemic oppression and racial violence. And this one really upended our ideas of how to even do this type of programmatic outreach. It was very impactful and humbling. And so we have over 1,000 people signed up for the LGBTQ plus learning and affirming challenge that I mentioned. And so I share all this because it seems to me that this format is resonating with people. Next slide.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about this already, but for our publicity, what we did was basically, as we've discussed previously, we've talked to our liaison department, university listservs, and people who had previously attended programs. And then we reached out to the communications department at the University of Maine, at least for the COVID-19 Misinformation Challenge. And they did a lot of social media postings. For the news literacy, race and racial justice misinformation, challenge, the timeliness of those topics really galvanized people, and that's in addition to the COVID-19 misinformation challenge. So a lot of what really caused that to have a lot of participation was just we happened upon a particular topic at the right time. So again, we reached out to the typicals that I've already talked about. But because these challenges were entirely free of content without logins or any credentials required, we also shared them on ALA and ACRL listservs, MeLibs, which is kind of Maine specific, and Communication Studies Scholars List. And that's particularly for the news literacy challenge. And again, a big thing I think that happened is people really responded through word of mouth. So you would have a couple of people take it and they seemed to talk to their friends. And then you'd have like a huge number of people take it. I think we had a large number of, for the COVID-19 challenge, teachers seemed to take the challenge and comment on it. All right. So I'm just gonna make sure there aren't any more comments or questions before I go to the next slide. Okay. Okay, this is an interesting question that I want to highlight from Helen before I move on. She says, do you have any faculty involvement in developing the content, the campus anti-racism or diversity office or the sexual diversity office? And I'll let Jen answer that one a bit more because I believe she did.
Yeah, thanks, Cinta. Yes, so with the Racial Justice Challenge, we worked with the Office for Diversity and Inclusion on campus and a graduate student. And it was a graduate student actually who initiated that challenge, reached out to me because she had participated in a bunch of our challenges and said, this must happen. How can we make this happen? And so it was a collaborative effort. For the LGBTQ plus challenge, it was a student, another graduate student who is a person of color and queer who said, I would like to make this happen. It's actually part of his master's work. And another communication scholar who specializes in queer communication pedagogy collaborated on this, as well as a women's and gender studies professor. So yes, we do collaborate with anyone who's interested and has relevant expertise or who just wants to be involved in something like this and contribute their voice. So yes, we do. Thank you for asking.
So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, you guys. Some primary takeaways we had from this particular method was there were some clear pros to doing things this way. We get a very diverse group of people took this. You can really reach anyone with an internet connection, and it works for people who can't maybe participate in something right at the moment, so they can do something asynchronously. So it works for them at their own pace. We found that the content worked best and was most appreciated if it was succinct and clear and it was digestible, doable tasks. So people would tell us they like small morsels to kind of do. And then again, images. I think Jen is great at finding amazing images that go along with these, and they really seem to pique people's interest. And then finally, another thing that we noticed is that we had to kind of constantly iterate these projects. So kind of constantly edit, go over, check, see if it worked. And so we found ourselves testing and experimenting with others for editorial like tweaks and, you know, tone, like polish and clarity with it. And so let's see if people have any comments about this. It looks like Robert has a good one, or I'm sorry, Robin. And how do you keep up with all of the responses from so many participants from outside of your campus, or do you? I believe Jen can answer this well, because I think she had a spreadsheet going for quite a while.
Yes, that's a great question. So, Robin, I'm not sure if you're referring to people who email us directly or the responses on, say, the Padlets themselves or in the Google Forms. But so Cinta and I would receive all sorts of direct messages from folks participating in the challenge, and we would try our best to respond to all of them. And most of them were just like people sharing their experience and just wanting to be heard. But we have grappled with this. This is actually a very complicated question that you've asked, because for the racial justice challenge, our group, our challenge team kind of went round and round about, well, do we use Padlets for anonymous kind of comment boarding, if that's a word. And you can enable people to respond and have conversations, or you can disable that and just have people share their own experience. And at the time, because over 3,000 people signed up and there's no way we could moderate all of that, not everyone will respond to the Padlets. They'll engage with your content in different ways. And we've learned that through this experience. But, you know, something like over 150 people responded, and still, you know, we have other things that we're doing in addition to this work. So we let people just kind of position themselves and share their own experience. That said, in subsequent challenges like the News Literacy Challenge, we thought, well, let's give it a chance for people to actually engage with one another, because we heard from people who said we'd actually like to respond to one another. So we did that, and that was actually useful because it wasn't just us, it was other people who were participating who would respond and kind of hear and listen and engage folks around issues that they brought up. So it's a great question. There's no way we could respond to everything depending on the amount of people who participate, but some of them are much smaller. So the ones that are just like local, you know, if there's 100 people, even you're not going to hear from 100 people, but you might have some people who reach out with specific questions or concerns or kudos. We get lots of kudos. Lots of undergraduates, for instance, in the Lit Review Challenge were like, thank you for decoding research. You know, we're told by our instructors to do these things and we don't understand how to do them. And so this format gives them a chance to digest some of that. So I hope that helps in some way. And then several people asked, did you have a target amount of time you wanted people to put into each day? And that really differed. And that's something you can include in your emails. So with the Racial Justice Challenge, we expected more time, but also we expected that these 5 days were going to be presented without people necessarily finishing the work in 5 days. So it just depends on what people are able to put into it. But like Cinta and I expected maybe 15 minutes with the COVID-19 Misinformation Challenge. In general, we expect, you know, maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day. And then it really depends on if it's embedded in a course, if the faculty are also expecting reflections. So I hope that helps. And there's not a right amount of time. It's really what you kind of want from that experience or what you think people want. And you can even pilot or do focus groups to get some feedback. But we will just quickly go to one other slide. We have a few minutes left, and we would love to know if you could put in chat or share just to give us all some inspiration. How do you think email challenges might work in your library or your setting, your institution? Are there topics or content that you think would specifically benefit from this approach? I will say that we've had people share with us that they might do internal professional development this way. So they actually within the library or within their institution, they might use an email challenge to train student employees. We've heard that too. We have people posting, this could be great for evaluating sources or lateral reading, for reading articles, intro to first year courses, systematic reviews. Yeah, what do you see, Cinta?
Copyright for faculty. I really like that. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. OERs, news literacy, yes, power researcher for that. Fair use training, definitely. Arabian formatting, all right. I remember Arabian, yes. 3 days would be interesting, Brandy. Brandy asked if all of them have been 5 days, and I believe so, but 3-day could be nice. I think it's
As people are putting comments in the chat, we have 4 minutes left and we do get cut off, right at the hour mark. So I do want to note that there is an assessment in the chat. I'm going to drop it again. Sorry, y'all. It's my job. But I want to thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your expertise with us today. I would also like to thank Elois Sharp, as well as everyone else at the ACRL office who always help make the magic happen for these presentations. Remember that we will send the link to the recording and other supplemental documents for this session when it is available. And please, again, fill out that evaluation so that we can continue to improve these sessions. And Cinta and Jen, feel free to put your contact information in the chat as well.
Cinta, do you want to go to the next slide so people have it up on screen too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Excuse me, every time, I apologize, you guys. I'm kind of having weird tech. Here we go.
You did it. I'm putting yours in here too, Cinta. Okay, so now you all have both of our email addresses. Yeah, we hope you won't hesitate to reach out. I love all these ideas. Sam, one of the questions that someone asked was, could the ideas for challenges, so maybe could the chat be shared with attendees?
So we don't, because we don't ask permission to share the chat and the Q&A, we don't typically do that. We did track every link that was shared in the chat. That is a part of our procedure. And Jen and Cinta, if you want to update your Google slides with anything this afternoon or tomorrow morning, I will send the email of an updated link to your Google slides to Elois, and it would include anything you want to add.
Great. I don't know if the anonymous attendee is still here since we have a couple minutes, but someone asked, were there ever any challenges that did not work or were not successful? And I would say, not yet. Yeah, that said, we have rerun some challenges multiple times. Like we have a research impact challenge we rerun every year because we're asked by the campus research office to do that. And so we may see a drop in attendance over time, but we still see pretty good participation because we get new researchers every year. We get new people, coming to campus. We get new grad students. So far we've been pretty lucky with these sorts of programs, and we get phenomenal responses from people participating. Did you see continued use of pivot after the challenge via usage test? That's a great question. I would have to go take a look. I haven't looked, but that's a great question. Probably. You have a point there. It's very intuitive that whenever we have trainings, we see a spike in usage of those databases, which is to be expected, but likely after the challenges, but I'd have to check to confirm. But that's often what we see. Oh, someone asked Cinta if there's a way to automate these challenges so they can be ongoing. Is there an advantage to having everyone participate together? I mean, ours remain live and accessible, so it's not automated, but the work is there. What do you think?
I think it would be awesome to automate them. I'm just trying to figure out the technology behind that. I guess you could have it. I'm sure it could be done. Yeah, no, that's a cool idea.
Maybe with some skilled staff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have 1 minute to go. Are there any final questions, as I have to cut this off right at the 2 o'clock Central Time mark?
Well, I do see that same person asked, is there an advantage to having everyone participate together? And I would say that people enjoy participating together. I think that we mentioned earlier that we got feedback that was of interest. And with some of the racial justice challenge and the LGBTQ plus challenge, some of those challenges, people want to work in concert to help each other stay accountable, but also to share the experience. So there is value.
Great. Thank you so much. Jen and Cinta, I did save the chat. I will send it to y'all, and you can decide if you want to add any information or slide to your Google Slides. Be on the lookout, everyone, for the reporting information from ACRL plus the supplemental materials we might send you. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon, a great week. It's Monday. And bye, everyone. Thank you.